Hi there, YouTube Live. This is Chris Gazdick, Victoria Pendergrass.
Victoria.
That is the greeting that Mr. John Pope gives
it.
Victoria in the morning. I actually tried to do that, John, and she told me not to.
Oh.
I'm
Yes,
not allowed
I
to
did.
do it.
He tried. It did
it's
not
a-
sound the same. I
it's-
said that those rights
it's
are reserved for
proprietary.
John.
Yeah,
Yes.
it is definitely proprietary. So this is through a Therapist's Eyes, episode 259.
We're flying through these.
I know, right?
Oh my goodness.
Repairing past false beliefs. And so this is before we get the Spotify version going. You get a little behind the scenes, and you tune into about 6:15 to 6:30. We live, and you can interact with us on the show if you're finding us for the first time. Tell your friends, man. Get us geeked up on subscriptions. We need some more subscriptions.
You know what this means?
What does this mean?
Is that John and I have been on here for over a year now.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Hot diggity.
'Cause
How
think
do you
about
know
it,
this?
Well, because if you think about it, there's 52 weeks in a year. We started on episode 200-ish, right?
Okay, well, I have no idea. I started on episode 1. So
Right.
that's
Well,
kinda-
John and I
It's hard for me
joined
to-
on episode 200.
Oh, was
And
it
if it's-
200?
Yeah, and then if it's
Oh, wow.
259, that means that we're slightly over a year.
That's
Am
wonderful.
I
Grateful.
delusional?
You know what? You're not, and I appreciate that. Like this is I feel good about this, and I missed doing these with you over the holidays. I think I told you it was good to get back. It's it's the highlight of my week. You know,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is, and so yeah. Well, thank you for that. That's
And
a
I
long
enjoy
time.
it. And I
amazing.
think if you like the podcast, you'll give us a rating of 5 stars.
We need to ask 5 stars, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
And I think there's a transference of knowledge, and we get to share. We learn from all of you guys.
I think this is why everyone loves the Pope.
Yeah. I always get excited when new people come into the office and I'm like, who are you seeing today? And they're like, I'm a new client. I'm here to see Dr. Pope.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, oh, you're in for a great ride.
Absolutely. All right, whenever you're ready
Thank
to go,
you,
Neil.
Victoria.
Let's rock it. What is the date today, anyway? Is it
The
18th?
18th.
18th, yeah.
Ah! Hello there. I am Chris Gazdick with Through a Therapist's Eyes here talking to you on January the 18th. We are in 2024, riding with you in the new year, and we're real happy that you've joined us yet again. We're going to be talking about repairing past false beliefs. That's kind of hard to say. Repairing past false
Alliteration.
beliefs. The alliteration, yes.
Yeah.
That is the Pope, Mr. John Pope, with us.
It's nice to be here.
All right.
It's nice to still be here.
Right? We were just...
As I'm getting past 70, man.
You're getting there. You're getting there. Miss Victoria Pendergrass is with us in
Good evening.
the evening as well. You're a little tired.
I am exhausted.
That
Yes.
baby not letting you sleep.
No, what that and I just don't sleep.
You know, I didn't have a good night's sleep last night either. We need to talk after the show. So the questions that we have
We had a professor at seminary. We called him Dr. Salmonex.
Salmonex.
Salmonex was a sleep aid.
I was going to say that must be old school sleep aid
Yeah.
because he took a lot of them, or he gave you.
He made us
He
go to
gave
sleep.
you an in dose every time he
Oh,
took.
It
I
was just
definitely
like
had professors like that.
Ferris
That's
Bueller's Day
terrible.
Off with
That's terrible.
Bueller. I'm sorry. So,
Is this a part of the millennial commitment fear, repairing past false beliefs? Provocative from last show. Do you actively think about and thus reframe what happened to you with perceptions or even aware that they are active? Provocative question. And then a little bit of a burr question. You know, it's kind of a mean question. But did you listen to the show on implicit bias, episode 173? Because this is all about that in a lot of ways. Listen, we are a panel of therapists sharing mental health and substance abuse knowledge with you, not delivering therapy services of any kind. We ask you to subscribe to the YouTube channel. It is helpful. It's what we're trying to do this year to help see us live and check out some of the shorts we're creating nowadays. So go to that on Through a Therapist's Eyes. You type it in when you're at YouTube. John wants 5 stars.
Yes, 5 stars because that takes us up to the top.
Yes.
And
Helps the algorithm.
The algorithm.
You really get upset at 4 stars, don't you?
Yes, I do.
That's a thing for you. You just jumped right on that.
Well, every podcast I listen to, they say, give us 5 stars.
Right.
And we are certainly...
We're up there with them.
We're up there with them.
I mean, we're not subpar.
Yeah, no.
No. Okay. Yeah. 5 stars. Listen, First Horizon Bank is our sponsor, and we are glad that they are still hanging out with us. They've got branches all around the country, I suspect the world. First Horizon Bank. That's a quick Google question, Neil. Does First Horizon Bank have branches in other spaces of the world? We need to know that.
I think they have... How many branches do they have? Like 400 and something?
They have a lot of branches.
A lot of branches.
First Horizon. And we know they're based out of? Victoria.
Memphis.
Oh, man. We're going to get you on this. There's going to be a time when questions is asked about our show sponsor, First Horizon Bank, out of
Memphis.
She is going to give a quick answer on
That's
Brumpet.
not Memphis, Egypt.
That's not Egypt.
Or
no.
Memphis, Florida.
Is there a Memphis, Egypt?
Yes, there
All right.
was. And there's a Memphis, Florida.
Do we have a Memphis, North Carolina?
All right, we
There's
just
not
got to
one in
pay the
North
bills by
Carolina.
having First Horizon Bank being known as a good bank. Thanks
We
for
can literally
joining
see a
us.
First Horizon from our office.
We can. That's one of the reasons why we bank with First Horizon Bank. All right, what else I got to tell you? That's probably good. Listen, this is the human emotional experience which we endeavor to figure out together. Let me tell you what the origination of this show was, which recently has been kind of more often session events or session experiences. A lot of the shows that we do are that, but I was in session last week, and John, it was actually after I asked you, what do you want to talk about?
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was. When did I ask you?
Yesterday.
No,
Yesterday.
Never mind. Check that. That's I'm way off. Anyway, I was in session with somebody, and we were talking about the reflection that she had of really being able to do this, which was actively and purposefully look at events in her life and repairing these beliefs that she had developed, perceptions that she had from pretty tough. Hers was trauma. We're going to talk about trauma realities, but we're also going to talk about other things.
So it's misperceptions.
Misperceptions, misperceived realities, misunderstandings, mismessaging that she was doing in her mind about trauma that she had.
It must
in
have
her
been
life.
a misunderstanding.
With herself.
Right. Okay.
With
I was
herself.
doing the Genesis song.
I was wondering if there was a song there.
Yes, there was a song.
What's the Genesis song? You
He
gotta
was
help me. I love
standing in the rain.
Genesis.
It must have been a misunderstanding.
Yes. Okay. I love Genesis.
Genesis, I do too.
I'm a big Genesis fan.
It's
I
So-
have no idea who that is.
they're number one.
Did
Like
And Neil just gave me a look because I said that.
you see if they have branches in the other parts of the world? You didn't see, or they don't? They do not.
how many
Okay.
branches do they have?
They are
I was
330
close.
branches.
Yeah, you
That's
are.
close, yeah.
Out of.
Memphis.
All right.
Out of
We're going to
Memphis.
help you, man. Next time we introduce our sponsor, you're going to bang right on it.
I knew it just took me a second.
So what do you guys think about this topic, right? Let's kind of dig in a little bit here to, your therapy brains must know that we're dealing with this all the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, so what do you think about this? How do you see this? It's a complicated process. I think I'm going to come to you first, Victoria. Like,
Okay.
being newer into the field, the younger of the variety old people here that you're hanging with.
Such old people.
How have you made sense of the complicated process to repair your past false beliefs?
I think one thing is starting with accepting or realizing or whatnot that a lot of people, most people experience this, whether they realize it or not. And so, like, accept.
You did that mid-sentence stop thing. I wasn't sure if we were. Yes, I'm
Yes.
gazing. I'm looking at you.
Yes, that most people experience these without even realizing it. And it's actually, I was talking about this earlier today in session. I hate using the word normal or average or whatnot, but it is kind of normal. I mean, like, Right,
Yeah,
which
no,
is-
I agree. I agree
like
with
most
you.
people
We're
experience it is
so
a,
limited in language
Yeah, it
now.
is a pretty regular thing.
We're so limited in language.
That
I'm gonna let that go too. Go
Uh,
ahead. Sorry, we're
but,
interrupting
yeah.
you, Victoria.
No, I'm just saying me personally. I hate using the word normal because I don't really think that normal is a thing. But
You're within the bell curve.
yeah,
Okay.
of that it happens to a lot of people, and I think that's kind of like the first step in accepting that you're not the only person that experiences these false beliefs.
You know, I love the word normal in this instance especially, and I think you're absolutely right on point because the reality of it is these things are very, very typical, very, very common, and I do not think it is typical though or common. What say you guys that people become aware of their individual false beliefs, right? And that's the real rub. That's the real danger.
Well, because a lot of times it's been a part of their life for a significant
Long time.
Yeah, significant amount of time, and it's one of those things that maybe at the beginning they kind of questioned it, but it just stuck around, and so then it gets to that point where you're just like, oh, it's just like you don't even know it's there.
And back to my real moment that was the genesis of the show. It was a traumatic reality involving some domestic violence and various traumas that kind of went along with that. And the belief was that, you know, this person was alone, really alone in the experiences that they were having, and that no one was willing to save them. And
That's what their thought was?
yeah, and it was cool because literally as you know we were talking about that or that statement was made, you saw like a new and developing active ability to switch over into a different belief that is more reality based, if you will, that is more grounded in an objective truth, which is, of course, there were people all around her, probably, you know, that were willing and interested and able, likely afraid to, didn't know how to, but wanted to literally save her, particularly if they knew what was going on, which
Right.
they might not have even known. So it's just, you see what I'm saying? Like, that is a completely switched belief. So yeah, let me jump back to you, John. Though, with you know, we see this all the time. We deal with this all the time. I know your extensive experience with the military. You know, there's all kind of false beliefs that you're kind of dealing with. So so what are your thoughts off the front end of this?
Well, excuse me. I was thinking about as you were talking, not just the trauma, but false beliefs. It kind of took me back to a time. During the civil rights, we just got off MLK, Martin Luther King Day, and that sort of thing. And I kind of grew up during that time.
Oh yeah.
And I remember that my grandparents on my father's side, wonderful, wonderful people, salt of the earth people, but they would have never thought about having African Americans that worked for them during haying season to pick up, to sit at the same table, and that was a problem. There was a bias that they grew up with, and to see them over the years, at that from let's say the early '60s to the '70s, where there was nothing about that anymore, and so they changed. And I guess that's what I was thinking with implicit bias is the bias you grow up with. It constrains you. It actually encumbers you from seeing people as for possibilities of having new relationships.
And so in that way, you're saying you saw an active change in mentality or understanding and appreciation of the moment. And on a grand level, a societal level, you saw a lot of
and I think that's
repairing false beliefs.
And I don't want us to go back to the old ways of so.
Yeah.
Again, we always want things to be better, not how they... I think I've mentioned that before.
I think so. And we've talked about this before, really. I mean, I think that you want to check out episode 173. That was one of the questions. Like, did you listen to that show? Because really, and John, you said that we talked about this before. In a way, yes, because, you know, we're dealing with trauma. We're dealing with things from our past and how they play out in present day.
Okay. Well, that's for example, in trauma, one of the issues that I've dealt with, particularly with the military, is they see somebody get killed, and and it's a child, and then they start to get very angry, and they blame themselves. They feel guilt. They don't feel like they could go into church. They can't even go to a church. They're angry.
Wow, that's real raw stuff.
It's raw stuff, and my feeling is, in something like PTSD, there's a very strong spiritual component, and if you ignore that, you're not going to help that person heal. And that they have to be able to forgive themselves, forgive what they've done, if they've had to do something, take a life, or and also forgive God, in a sense, that in that understanding of God as being like, it's not fair.
Yeah,
and so they live with that, by that anger or that constraint that I think stifles their relationships with other people.
Sure.
Okay. Developing trust.
There's just a lot there, and so let's dissect it a little bit, and you know how to get that. The YouTube question that we have is pretty cool. Is, and Carolyn, you're welcome. I should say. She says thank you. I said you're welcome. So the YouTube question is, where do these things come from? Parents, religion, school, society, propaganda, and we want to talk about that. As a matter of fact, it's a good segue to kind of go into just exactly that. All right.
I know where I want to go to, and I'm not going to.
Right. Understanding how false beliefs can and do develop. So. Again, I mentioned these can be trauma-based. I want to challenge us to think differently as clinicians for a moment, because I think we're so geared to easily go to trauma work. I mean, trauma work is a bit right. You know, it's all through this,
all through schooling, all through everything.
Okay, but let's get away from our clinical brains in the sense of trauma work and think about all of us that haven't experienced trauma for a moment, and talk about, this YouTube question, for instance. Where does this stuff come from? These things that we believe that somehow we don't know are false beliefs. And it doesn't just happen in trauma. It's a universal part of the human emotional experience. So where do these come from? For you, me, the listener person here that doesn't experience or hasn't experienced traumatic events?
I would say everything she listed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, it literally can come from parents, how you were raised, the school you went to, like, even can come from, like, the church you grew up in. It can come from, like, all of those places, I think.
Yeah,
I don't think you're right. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I agree that it doesn't have to just be trauma related.
Right.
Like, there doesn't have to be trauma in how your parents parented you, but there can still be some, like, these false beliefs that develop because of the life experiences in certain times.
So what comes to my mind as I'm listening to you? Y'all know that activity that people do, when they go do a program and they go into a high school and they line everybody up on the gym floor at the baseline under the basket. And they say, okay, if you've ever experienced what we're going to say, all we want you to do is just to take one step forward. So have you ever experienced someone calling you a geek? And, a couple people step forward.
Yeah.
Or has anyone ever called you stupid? And has anyone ever said you're ugly? Or has anyone ever said, or have you ever been stood up on a date? You actually did that?
We did.
Oh, that's cool.
We had the challenge day program.
So right.
Come to our school.
Every day, is everybody a victim? At that point?
Well, what you see, John, if in this activity that I just described, of course, is that there isn't anybody left on the baseline, and the person has probably gone at least halfway across the gym that has the least amount of steps they've taken.
And plus, and I've seen it differently where people just cross a line. Like, there's two lines, everyone's on one side, and if it applies to you, you go to the other side and look at the other people.
Oh, okay.
Specifically, like I remember one of the questions was, do you feel like you experienced a true childhood or something like that? And only like a small majority of people like crossed the line,
Oh,
which means
interesting.
everybody that stayed back felt like they had to grow up a lot faster and didn't really get to experience like a childhood.
Yeah.
And like, yes, John.
Yeah.
No,
I feel like
I'm
you gotta
just
say something.
John's bursting with thought. Let me
No,
come to you in a
I
moment,
think
just of
we-
saying
we
that this
live. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
come because
No,
I know
keep going.
you've been bursting for a minute or so. This activity demonstrates to me, to your point, Victoria, like the reality is that we really are all affected in some way, shape, or form by the emotional experiences that we've had,
Yeah.
and then into how we believe. So you've been bursting, John. What
Now-
you thinking?
I'm going to say that we have taught people and inculcated in them a sense that they
Big word. What's that mean?
inculcate. In other words, we've kind of, I don't want to say brainwashed, but we kind of brainwashed, put it in people's mentality that everybody is helpless and hopeless to a certain extent by saying that they
I love this.
don't have
Right. Right.
And I didn't have a normal childhood, but I had a great childhood at the same time.
Right.
I mean, there was trauma. I fell off a hay wagon and nearly killed myself. I mean, that sort of thing.
Right, heck yeah.
I got histoplasmosis and I couldn't breathe. I nearly had to be hospitalized. It wasn't normal, you know? And, excuse me. And I think we've made it so that everybody is so special that we don't have empowerment.
Everybody gets a participation award.
Speak
It's a
it, John. Speak
participation.
it, John.
All right. Yes, everybody gets. My daughter didn't show up to because we had church on Sunday. She didn't show up to 9/10 of the soccer games that she played. She got an award. My daughter Bethany. You know, it's just it's ridiculous to me.
So the interesting thing here is I don't think I had this on the show notes. That's why I love this. You know, we got a great panel. To
And
have
I think we should
conversations
be
about this, right?
compassionate and empathetic.
Well, absolutely, John.
Yeah.
And the thing is Gen X, we parented and brought all this stuff in. So we need to be acknowledging and aware of that. I've been very
Like you said last
thinking
time,
about
who's
that. Great.
giving the award?
I know it's. I'm so worried that my whole cohort screwed everything up because your cohort, John, screwed our heads up. But anyway,
Yeah, we did.
you know, I mean,
I-
we have done this to the millennials.
I wasn't old. I'm a young baby boomer, so
but think
I
about-
wasn't young. My kids are millennials, you know.
But think about this, right? So you're like kind of an honorary Gen X person, John.
Yes,
right? That's
I am.
cool. We'll accept you in.
Thank you.
Here's
I identify more with Gen Xers.
But here's what I'm really getting at, Victoria. You answered the question.
Yeah.
That was put on YouTube. You know, does this come from religion? Does this come from propaganda? Does this come from our
everything.
parents? Does this? You know what? I think it comes from us.
Yeah.
And John, I think that's what you were getting at.
Yes.
This is an empowerment reality that, thank goodness, it comes from us internally in relationship to all those things. But we have developed, and I think this is so important. This is why when you started talking, John, I saw you were jumping out of your skin, and we're connecting on this because we need to understand that we are creating these false beliefs.
Exactly.
Our parents didn't. Religion didn't.
Yeah,
the
but we're-
propaganda. Listen,
Yeah.
the propaganda issues that we have in the information technology doesn't. We are accountable to what we're believing, perceiving, experiencing, thinking, rationalizing, minimizing, all of that. What you think?
Yeah, I mean, I guess you kind of said it. Yes, I think I would kind of agree with that we created ourselves, but we created ourselves based on the experiences that we have with all of those places.
Absolutely.
So
And-
the experiences you have with religion, then you create that belief yourself, but it's based off of your experiences within whatever
Yeah, so-
religion.
Let me ask you
School.
this. is so we have blinders that are given to us by the culture that we're in and the situation and the time, and in a sense that we are indeed very privileged to live in the United States of America in the 2024. But there is a sense that we will choose to stay with those fetters, those blinders. And so when we have the opportunity to be challenged, we don't see it, we don't seize it, we don't change. And so you get a generation that is known, and I hate to say this because evidently we boomers, if I hear "okay, boomer" anymore, I will just burst.
I love that from last session.
Yeah, but there is a stereotype for people that are millennials and Gen Zers, and I don't think it's necessarily fair, but there's some truth to it. I think it's incumbent upon the baby boom, not the baby boomer, but the Gen Xer or the millennial to say, okay, or Gen Z rather, we don't have to be constrained by that. We can choose a different way. We can choose to be better.
Well, let's get back to the individual perspective on this and go into the micro rather than just the big macro, because this is what we're trying to really begin to focus on for ourselves, our own experience, our own false beliefs that we all really have. How does this happen? And does this happen? Can this develop? I mean, you have got to understand, listening, that this is talking about you, whether you've identified something as traumatic in your life or not. You have implicit biases. You have beliefs about your life that we need to look at to reframe and re-understand. This causes so much pain for an individual person.
Mm-hmm.
It causes so much pain.
Can you give me an example? Let's say something that perhaps something you've been doing in terms of counseling, or
I'll give you a personal example that I've used on the show before. And it's one where, really still feel awkward about today. Remember when I talked about dancing?
Yes.
Right? I mean, that moment was indelible in my youth as a young adult, going out to the dance floor, trying to hit on some girl that I wanted to hit on that night. It didn't work out. She totally blew me off. I felt like an idiot anyway.
Uptight, out of sight.
Absolutely. Huh? I go back to the table, and there's Matt looking at me saying, dude, don't ever do that again. I mean, it was crushing.
Yeah.
And
you never did it. You never danced again.
Hell no.
Yeah.
Hell to the no. And it's just, I never enjoyed dancing a whole lot anyway, but that, now understand, I believed I don't dance well. That was a false belief, because I can dance like anybody else can. I mean, I guess. I don't really enjoy it probably because of that stuff, but it's a false belief, John, in such a simplistic way of being turned down when I got hit on one night.
Yeah.
Right? That's how easy
So
this
you
can
reinforce the myth that this is going to be, you're going to be awkward, you're going to be...
Right. And interesting to the point we were talking about with you, Victoria, is that Matt's issue? Did he create that for me, or was that me?
No, I
My
mean,
internal-
he's not the one that got up and
He
tried to
literally
dance.
told me not to ever do that again, in a stark way,
Yeah.
in a strong way, in somebody that was my boy. I mean, he was my buddy, right?
But then, I mean, I guess if you believe that people have choices, then you can choose to believe that, or you can choose to internalize it.
Absolutely.
And make it real yourself.
It's my responsibility.
Yeah.
I did that. I am
So it's basically
accountable.
just overgeneralization.
Well, yeah. What do you mean?
Overgeneralization, part of CBT, which states that just because something happened once, it's gonna happen. It happens all the time. For example, if I eat sushi and get sick, then I become afraid to eat sushi because every time I eat sushi, I think I'm gonna get sick.
Right.
And so then that's
Go ahead,
creates
John.
this, or you miss the bus once on your way to school because you had to run back and use the bathroom, and so then you end up going out to the bus 30 minutes early every day because you feel like you're gonna miss the bus.
It sounds like Victoria's had some experiences. No, I'm just
No,
kidding.
Okay,
I think
I
those are-
had a
Go,
sushi incident, and
Oh.
I was And I was on a Japanese ship back in at Subic Bay that had docked, and
Yeah.
they served sushi, and it was a little too ripe.
Oh boy.
Oh.
And so
Well, sushi's supposed to be raw.
but
He said
ripe
not raw.
flies. Okay.
Oh, that's bad.
Yeah.
Oh, that's disgusting.
So I'm sorry.
You're probably better eating that sushi I have in the fridge that's just from yesterday.
Yeah. And so, what false
Snake-
belief did that create for you?
That I will never.
You're
I
just
get
not
sick.
gonna hit sushi?
Every time it turns my stomach, and that's
Right?
why I gave you the 9th degree about whose sushi that was. Okay.
Oh, the one in our fridge. It's
Yeah.
mine. It's my sushi.
He was busting me up. He's like, "Do you get all this fancy? What did you call it? This fancy food or whatever stuff
Yeah.
bringing that in?"
The sushi came from Sam's Club.
Right?
Okay. Don't
Okay.
harp on Sam's Club sushi.
I give at Sam's Club a wide berth.
Okay.
when
let's
you
just
go to the sushi
okay.
section.
Let me focus us in here. Let me
Sorry.
focus us in a little bit, right? Yeah, like this is a big deal in the way that you've experienced your life. Like literally, non-traumatically, you have these little experiences, and I'm sure you're listening and you're thinking about your own experience, and that's wonderful. Like I really want to encourage you to do that. The ability to look at your life experience that stuck with you, and then look at what beliefs you developed from that. And the cool thing is that you can challenge that belief and begin to re-understand it and reframe it. It's one of the reasons why I wrote the book title, Through a Therapist's Eyes, Re-Understanding, Fill in the Blank, and Fill in the Blank, because I'm going to write another book or two with the same freaking concept because it's that big of a deal, right?
Well, I was going to say that's why I like your example, the dancing example, because that's a non-traumatic event
Right.
that happened to you.
And so is the sushi with
Yeah.
the flies.
Well, that might have been a little traumatic, but but like yours is a good example because I think it does show that it doesn't have to be this like big old thing like I was in a car wreck or like I was abused
I was literally just
or
turned down
like
by
I
a
was
girl.
doing all these
No
big
big deal.
traumatic things. It was simple as like I made a fool of myself on the dance floor and like my friend made a comment. Like that's not, and so I think that shows that that's where
Okay. Now, if you want to get serious, okay, you talk about somebody that gets human trafficked,
Yeah.
and exploited.
Say that. What?
Human
trafficked.
trafficking.
Human trafficked. Is that what
human
you
trafficked.
I can't
Human
say
trafficked.
that. There's a part of my brain that's not capable.
Someone that
of
was a
doing it.
victim of human trafficking. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, a victim. Now, it's horrible. It's horrible.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
they're going to be told that they're unlovely, and they're not worthy, and
Mm-hmm.
they actually they embrace, unfortunately, and that's a horrible way of using a wonderful word like embrace. But they have basically been in a straitjacket that won't allow them to see life that isn't abused and abusive, and I think
Right.
that they carry that with them. And so that is something that's evil that continues on with them and can be carried on to their children and their children's children.
Intergenerational. If we're not reframing, if
Right.
we're not managing it, if we're not, because we can reframe and manage, even in the circumstances of significant traumas like human trafficking. Absolutely. And you know what, John? It's becoming a lot more familiar.
Yeah.
Sadly,
What?
it's common
Human
to
trafficking?
be engaged
Or-
in human trafficking. Yes.
Yeah.
It is starting to really dangerously just explode. I mean,
It is.
it is unbelievable
And
the
that's-
way.
yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, no, I mean, human trafficking is like the biggest business in the world, basically. I mean, it's the most
Well-
profitable.
And I know I come down on social media all the time, but that's where a lot of people get trapped into it, and they
Oh, yeah.
get fished, and then they get exploited. And
Yeah, young girls are getting onto these sites and making good money, getting good, unfortunate
And I think the important thing is
contacts.
it's not just women or girls.
Oh, thank you.
It can
Men,
be
too.
boys too.
100%. In fact, more times than not,
Yeah.
it's the percentages are probably pretty. Don't quote me on this, but pretty close to 50-50.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's sad.
It's real.
And yeah, it's very real.
Okay, so we'll get more at that. Let's
I'll say we
see-
could do like a whole episode
Oh, yeah.
on
Well-
the mental effects and like all the things regarding
Yeah,
human,
we
like human trafficking and
we do need
things
a
like that.
whole one on that. I agree. Maybe mark that down. John or Victoria, I have a challenge for one of you two off the cuff. Which one of you wants to do a little schematic on what is implicit bias? A brief on episode 173. He
You mean-
says her real quick.
Hey, you're the one that listened to the episode.
I didn't listen to the episode.
Oh,
Well, it
you
was
said to
forever
listen
ago.
to it.
No, I said I didn't listen
Oh.
to it. I feel guilty.
It was forever ago.
So
I don't know. I think implicit bias is just. I don't know. I'm
Well,
backing out of this
so-
one.
so it's internalized, right? It's a bias, and it
A
it
bias
might,
that you have
it might
internally?
be a false. It might be your story
Yeah.
and your narrative, and you say, okay, well, I can never change. This always happens to me. You replay the tapes over and over again, and so you have a bias against yourself and your better interest. Or the way you view the world, or do you think everybody's against me? I'm going to eat some worms,
Right,
right?
right.
Am I touching on that?
You're absolutely on point. And the thing that we need to understand about that we took a deep dive on in episode 173 is the implicit nature of this versus the explicit nature. You have some biases that you might be explicitly aware of. You know, I think West Virginia's the best union and best state in the union. That's where I'm from. It's got great land masses. It's got
Beautiful
amazing,
state
beautiful
parks,
scapes,
national
the state
forests,
par-
yes.
all that outdoor, anything you want to do,
Almost
man.
heaven.
The New River Gorge, almost heaven.
Yeah.
West by God, Virginia. You got me going. Okay, look, that's just my explicit opinion. That's my explicit bias.
Okay.
But what's super dangerous about this, all that you were saying, John, there is the implicit nature of it. We don't even know we have them.
So what would be the implicit side of that?
We don't even know we have them.
So it's a
What?
blind spot.
It's a blind spot. You have
Okay.
developed a belief, a perception about the
Cool.
world, a person, a group of people, racism, or politics, or science. Or
Let me give you an
religion.
example
Right?
You go
from
first.
our physically, our eyes. We have where the optic nerve connects to the retina. We have a spot where you can't see. It's called a blind spot. What the brain does is it fills in what it thinks. And so
I've heard
it's
this
really
before, actually.
and so it's not real.
Yeah.
It's
can't
there.
see it.
You think it's real. Yes. I do think it's real. Okay. And you think it's real. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to operate because you're going to have this big circle of blindness, this black
In your field of vision.
field of
Yeah.
vision.
In your physical field of
But
vision.
we fill it in. It's not there.
Right. And this is what implicit bias
So-
is. It's a perfect explanation, John, because you will experience things in your life and you don't even know that they're formulating foundational beliefs, like fundamental understandings, about roles of gender or driving.
So the program
practices.
is flawed.
The programming is flawed. What do you mean? Yes.
Yeah. So, well, I was just thinking in terms of AI. I'm sorry.
You're fine. Keep going.
But when they did some early experiments with artificial intelligence, there was a conversation where they would one of the characters that was an artificial intelligence would then urge the person to commit suicide.
Okay.
Okay. And it's because it has the bias of the people that programmed it and its knowledge, and so it was bent that way.
Our human brains literally do the same thing.
Yeah.
So in grad school, I took which most grad schools you have to take like some type of diversity class, at least for therapy. And in this diversity class, greatest professor I think I've ever had, and they showed us this video, this black and white video. I may have talked about this before, but they showed us this black and white video one day.
I don't think you have.
And the camera is like a person. So like you're looking out as if it's
your
someone.
vision.
Yeah. And throughout it goes through this movie and people are mean to this individual. They say mean things. They do mean things to them. But all the while you never see the actual person that they're talking
camera.
about. Right.
You're looking through their eyes.
So I remember at the end of this video, our professor turned to us and said, like, who do you think that person is? Like, and so someone may have said, like, I think it's a Hispanic person.
Right.
I think it's a black person. I think it's a male. I think it's a female. And I think that's like a perfect way to explain it, because a lot of times that was a way, and not everybody answered, or I mean, they didn't make us like
Probably
answer.
should have wrote it down on a piece of paper and just,
But the point
yourself.
is that it makes you realize the type of biases you have without even realizing it, because everybody, even if you didn't think it out loud or say it out loud, even I did. Like, I was creating a person of who I thought they were talking to.
That's what our brains do.
And the point of it was to help realize, like, so that you can address it.
That's where we're going. And I'm going to maintain to you, and this is a really important point, insofar as how do you repair past false beliefs. So listen up, okay? You're hearing us talk about these past false beliefs, and they're a big part of your life. If you want to manage these false belief systems that hopefully we've somewhat convinced you that you have, then one of the things that you've got to make a contract or a construct with yourself about is that you need to actively challenge these beliefs.
Yes.
Actively. Because if you are passive with this, meaning you do not challenge the beliefs that you have, then these implicit biases, these beliefs that you have, will stay permanent in your thinking. That's just sort of a fact.
I think I on a macro level, that's what I was saying about how you could see somebody that's even older, that was my age at the time, go from where they were being discriminatory to people that would be more accepting. Not perfect, but would be more accepting of people of a different color, a different race.
Sure.
And so, but that's an active challenging that has to go on. That dialogue
internally is the big point here. Like, it starts with each individual person. That's the way that we make, change. And I don't even want to focus on societal change, because that's not what we're talking about. We're just literally talking about your life. For me, it's whether or not I'm going to dance in public or not. Fundamental belief structures. For a lot of years, I really didn't even realize that event was that much in my mind.
You did the Elaine Bennis dance that's from Seinfeld. Does that ring a bell to your Generation X? She was.
It should,
was
but I
asked to
don't. I
dance,
love
but
Seinfeld.
It was horrible.
It was a horrible dance.
I don't know, Neil, if you remember. Yeah, it was execrable.
Execrable.
Okay, her and excruciating to see her.
I do feel like I remember. What did she do? Because I'm
she
going to
did
match
this
her.
little kick and all of that, and embarrassed everybody, and people would. And it went on video or something like that, and everybody down the street,
I love
they would
Seinfeld.
go like this.
But I got to tell you something that's funny that's occurring to me as we're talking. As I was a little kid, you know what I would do and my family they would like make me do it because it was funny to them, I guess. I didn't know. I was just a little kid. Maybe this is really where my dancing stuff started. You know what I would do as a kid dancing? I would literally just stand up and just sort of go up and down.
Yeah, that's how my toddler dances.
Is that how you toddler dance? Okay.
He jumps up and down.
Yeah, not jumping, just literally just that's all I had.
I don't think you. Now there are some truths, and that is you have no rhythm.
Yeah, I do not have any rhythm, brother. I know this. I was in the high school band, and I sucked at the rhythm thing.
No, I was kidding.
Marching, yeah,
marching. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Marching band, yeah.
So let's just focus for a moment, and then we want to talk about how we actively do some of this stuff and whatever, what we mean and how you guys see the idea of being active rather than passive, and how you see people doing that in your offices, because that's such a large factor. It's such a big deal if you're going to get into doing this with yourself just at home, right? So how do you see people actively doing this? Do you trigger this? Do you thought about this like it's CBT, if you will?
1, regularly coming to therapy.
Mm-hmm.
2, I think just being open to actually like changing it. So daily reflection, self-reflections, being self-aware, things like that. I mean, you can't just sit and expect it to change.
Right. That's what I'm getting at. How do you see people doing this? Or do you see people doing this in our offices? And it is an active role. It's
heck,
an
that's
active
probably most of the time, like, why they continue to come back is because they feel that it helps.
Right.
Or they notice a change in the week or 2 weeks or month since they've been with us, and so they want to keep going.
Okay. Right. John, you have thoughts about
Well, I'm going back to my own traumatic childhood or high school. I wanted to go out with this girl, and she was beautiful. She was just such a goddess. I mean, absolutely delightful. And here I was, this kind of a little hefty husky.
You've seen this girl on the dance floor,
yeah,
John.
Yeah,
I know,
she
right?
I saw her on the dance floor, all that, and I was afraid to ask her out, and
Right.
I would go around and I'd get real embarrassed and all that. I went to my guidance counselor, Mr. Jake Hawkins, and he met with me over when guidance counselors actually did counseling,
some guidance, Jesus,
guidance,
yeah.
and all of that. And he said, "Okay, John Nelson, what you got to do is grab the bull by the horns." And that was an innocent remark back in those days.
Right.
And he said, you just have to, and if you don't succeed the first time, you got to try it again and do it. And if she doesn't go out with you, go out with another girl.
Yeah.
And he said, you can do it. And
So he gives you some encouragement, he give you a kick in the butt and sent you out there, right?
Yeah, and I know that's old-fashioned, but I think it was very helpful for me. And
Well,
because
it was
it's
very active rather than being passive.
yeah.
It was very active, and you know what's occurring to me, right? It was very active from a person who made an investment external from yourself
Good
into
therapist.
you.
Good
Good
therapy.
therapist, which is maybe what you were trying to say, Victoria. That people come back, they're engaging, or a good pastor, or a good friend,
Support system.
a system.
Support system.
Somebody can support you in doing this.
So he changed that negative implicit bias into something that would be a positive belief in myself.
Right, I love that. Say that again. It turned an negative self-bias, a negative self-implicit bias into a positive belief about yourself.
And it was a bias too, to a certain extent, because it was a positive bias.
We have those.
And
We
a
have those.
positive
And in
spin.
some ways, we call that naive.
Well, I've been accused of that.
I have as well.
And
I
I'm-
used to be very naive, particularly as a young man. Right? So we need to just be aware. I mean, we spend a lot of time on this because it's such a big part of, and we transition to how do we do this stuff. But it has to be active. It cannot be passive. You cannot believe that this is something that, okay, maybe I have a false belief.
Action.
And it'll just change on its own through different new positive life experiences. It just doesn't work that way. Once something gets embedded into your subconsciousness, into your foundational, fundamental, and cognitive behavioral therapy, we call it core belief system, it's there.
That's in your neuronal pathways between the neurons, the synapses, and part of that, you can't totally erase it. And so is that what you're saying is some of the negative things?
And-
but you can
yes.
try to overwhelm it and cause some sort of extinction of the negative behaviors where you will go a different way.
For instance, I can now believe that I can do my little dance and I am fine
happy
doing
dance.
it. I got a happy dance move and I'm okay. I'll never forget what Matt said to me, but I'm comfortable now being able to kind of
On the
engage
dance
that.
floor?
Until, of course, Victoria gives me a snicker snare. Did you see that on YouTube, people? Did you see the facial expression she gave me on YouTube?
What was it?
I did not give
she
you a
can't.
look.
I saw it out of the corner of my eye, John. Her name is Matt sent her up to this. Anyway, let's move on. I'm just being a little bit silly. You did have a little snicker though.
Victoria is victorious.
Is she? Okay.
Thank you, John.
So what do we do to do this work actively? You know, how do we really trigger this to occur? What are some of the things that we need to do either with ourselves or with other people? And I'll make it easy for our clinical brains. Think of trauma work. What do we do to kind of help with that?
You go back in the past. You figure out the timeline. You try to figure out when it started.
You do a narrative.
Yeah, a narrative, basically.
And so basically what you do is you recount the incident that was the trauma. For a lot of the folks that I've worked with, it's to tell the story of, let's say, why they were in the explosion, why they were, what happened at that time, what were you feeling, what were you thinking, what was going on, describe that. And then at that point, this is part of narrative therapy.
It is, yeah.
Is to rewrite the story and to reinterpret it.
You know, it's funny.
So you're not changing facts, though.
No.
You can't change the facts, but you change the view, the opinion,
and
the parts that are what you experienced.
Right.
Yes, you actually can. But, I was just listening to you, and it occurred to me in a natural flow, John, like, I'm listening to you, and of course we all know narrative therapy. I knew that would be easy for us to go down the track of like, well, you do this, and then this, and this, and this, and that's, particularly with trauma. But a story is so powerful that before we had essentially the written word, didn't generations of people know and understand their entire culture? Through the stories that people would share from generation to generation to generation. The story is that powerful.
The pre-literate literate societies, they would use a lot of repetition.
Right.
They would have choruses that would respond. Song, and to be able, and of course by singing, you do remember a lot easier.
Right.
So, and it enables that. So, the idea is that there's a recapitulation, and sometimes it seems like it goes back in circles, but actually it's moving the story forward.
Right.
And you do that. So, I mean, that's so. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to go off.
No,
on
you
that.
went with it absolutely because it just occurred to me that's amazing how how we can remember things, and we all have those family stories about the crazy Aunt Mary, or when you get together. We just got done with the holidays. Families get together and say, "Hey, do you remember when you came home that first time?" Or you remember when Mom, you remember when you cooked that lasagna and it burnt to a crisp, and we had to go to Papa John's Pizza for Thanksgiving. It's like all those things. Those are our stories.
You do this also with grief counseling, I think,
right?
As well. Viktor Frankl. The psychiatrist, the Austrian psychiatrist, developed existential therapy, which is called logotherapy, and it's basically people reinterpreting the horrible events that happened to them, not changing the facts, but changing how they viewed it to give them purpose and meaning in life.
Now, let me kind of say, particularly in the trauma world, we've talked about this on. So, you might be daunted. You might be feeling overwhelmed listening to this. And that's understandable because it's not just one story. It's like story after story, or traumatic event after traumatic event after traumatic event. And let me give you some solace in that reality. Yeah, Victoria, you started us out right in the starting spot with the timeline. You go back in history, like what happened, what's the timeline and whatnot. If you deal with the first or the worst, it plays out to all the rest.
Mm-hmm.
How cool is that reality? Yeah. Let me say that again.
For sure.
So what you need to think about is the worst thing that you experienced or the first thing that you experienced, and look at that, reframe that, work with those thoughts, wonder and get curious about what I've developed as a belief from that. See if I want to keep that belief or change that belief. When you do that work on the first or the worst, it goes to all the rest.
There you go.
Right? How cool is that? That's empowering. That's encouraging. That's you can
I get
make great
this
impact.
vision of a giant wheel with gears within gears, and you change
Yep.
it, the gear goes into a different mode,
Yeah.
and it changes the whole
The whole clock.
the whole
function.
rhythm,
The whole rhythm, the
changes the time.
Yeah, and don't we see that in therapy? Some of the amazing things that happen when people go like, dude, when lights turn on and people, when we figured out that she wasn't alone and that there were people that wanted to help her save her life, wow, how cool is that?
Light bulb.
How cool is that?
Yeah.
Because that plays out today, y'all. That plays out in life right here and now. And that's why we encourage you to look at these beliefs and don't do this alone and kind of, go through this process. As scary as it might feel in the front end, it changes past false beliefs.
So it's bad enough that there are people that will do evil and will deliberately bind you and keep you down, but it's a tragedy, more of a tragedy in the sense that once you have been freed of that evil, you still carry that.
The remnants, the beliefs. Yeah, absolutely, John. You're right. And something as traumatic as special operators in the military, event after event after event after event, or somebody who comes from a substance abuse family system, which is an event after an event after an event. I oftentimes use the police officers almost, I'm not going to say almost, I'm going to make the bold statement, to a man and a woman in the force. They have traumatic realities in its event after event after event.
I haven't met an officer, and this is
I know.
people that has not been traumatized,
Yeah.
or a fire person,
To a man
firefighter.
and a woman.
Yeah.
Yeah, other...
EMS.
I'm going to say that other first responders don't. I've carried the belief, John, that police officers have it worse.
Okay.
For better or worse.
You mean
It's my bias.
getting brain tissue off their shoes after
I
somebody
mean,
shot themselves?
it just
in there?
doesn't stop for them,
Yeah.
and they never get to turn it off. I mean, when I go home, I know I'm not going to be in an ambulance as a first responder in an EMS system. But when I'm home as a police officer, people know where I live. You can't just turn this off. You're like always an officer, is kind of what I mean by that. So, but yeah, it's all first responders are to a man and a woman affected, for sure. Be kind to your first responders, everybody.
Yeah.
So, okay, we're winding into. We want to make sure that we spend enough time a little bit on okay, so what do we do? So how does this start? Let's get back to that. Victoria, you're talking about going back in the past, kind of looking at timelines and getting into your story. Story is a big factor. We talked about being aware in the first place that you probably have those. Make that assumption. Can I make that point strong enough?
Sure.
Got to make the assumption that you have past false beliefs. Still a little hard to say. Past false beliefs. Make that assumption and then begin to critically examine those beliefs.
So
and
you're
facts.
talking about intentionality.
Intentionality, purposefulness, activeness, yes.
Purpose-driven life.
You've heard of that
Yes.
text,
Rick
maybe.
Wallen, yeah.
Yeah.
It's on point. And so anything else come to mind? I mean, getting into the nitty-gritty on, what people do, that's helpful. I'm going to make the point, don't do this alone.
Yeah, I was just talking to someone about this today. Is you have a support system for a reason. Freaking use it.
Right.
Your friends and family and whoever else is in your support system, they're there for a reason.
And that's not just for trauma, guys. That's when you have a
Everybody.
That's
denial
everyday basic life.
when you've been rejected by the guy that you're trying to hit on. That, don't be alone with that.
Be like a bridge over troubled water.
I love that song. Is that a song? Or
Yeah.
a poem?
It is.
Like a bridge over troubled water.
There you go.
You're gonna be there. That's the other thing is that we all have events in our lives where we need somebody to be with and someone to care, someone that and if you're not getting that in your present environment, You need to be able to reach out and just take that leap. Can I ask one more thing, and that is, we use our phones, we use our computers, and all of that.
Right.
But you can't hug a computer. You can't hug a webcam.
Right.
Even though, Neil, you do a great job making it real. The thing is, you can't do that.
Right.
You have to have somebody.
I like what you're getting
And
at.
everybody has the opportunity to have somebody. I know that there's maybe the exceptions that aren't
Don't be
there.
alone.
It's what,
Physically
like,
as much as
an
emotionally.
effective hug is supposed to be like 20 seconds long at the least.
Yeah, really.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like
I
for
believe
for a hug to actually like chemically help your body what it's supposed to do, I think it's something like 20 seconds or something like that.
I've never heard that before. That's
To
interesting.
like there's
Yeah.
this new movie that's coming out. I can't remember what it's called, but it's about birds migrating or something like that. And in one of the trailers, one of the birds hugs another bird, and he's like, "Are you feeling better yet?" And the guy, and he's something like, "No, I'm not." And he's like, "That's because it hasn't kicked in yet," or
Nice.
whatever.
Yeah.
And like, so he
Well,
just
they're just
keeps
the
hugging him
endorphins.
until until your endorphins
We're
are released.
sensory creatures, and so the endorphins need to kick in.
Yeah.
And be a
I mean,
part of
sometimes
the
I look at
physical.
my husband can attest to this. Sometimes I look at him and I'm like, babe, I just need a hug.
Yeah.
And he'll just
Absolutely.
like stand there and hug me for however long I need. And then I'm like, okay, I'm good.
Yeah,
Okay,
and then you
thanks.
go along your way. Yeah, and I think it's cool that we have 988 nowadays, and you can text 988, and we do have video cams, and we do have virtual sessions that we even do with therapy. The pandemic has brought on an onslaught of that. I'm concerned that that's the more common theme
Yeah.
because it's not
But
best
there's just
practice.
something
but
about
there's
individual-
something about
face-to-face.
face to face in the person, John. I think you're absolutely on point. Physically with that. Another couple things to think about also along those lines in your environment. We haven't really said it yet, but you got to be careful about an ongoing chronic negative environment too.
Yeah. My mom always told me, you are who you hang around.
Right?
And
that's it. That, you're the product of the 5 closest relationships that you have.
Or some-
others
yeah.
will say.
Yeah.
I mean, that's an important thing. And we do live in echo chambers nowadays, y'all. I mean, you're out there listening to things that only agree with you.
Oh, you listen to
It's-
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
it's just like my TikTok algorithm is geared towards things that
that's-
I agree with because of
Yeah.
things videos I've liked, things that I've posted myself.
It's a
Like,
danger.
yeah. And
Yeah.
so then it's like, well, yeah,
Learn something new.
Yeah.
Look at something different.
Yeah, if
go
I'm
outside, breathe
looking
fresh
for
air.
something to do some research on things, that I'll end up getting a lot of those ads and things like that. So.
Yeah.
You will. They'll
be
come.
very
They're tracking
careful.
you. They're
Be
watching you,
careful.
John. All right. What do we need to get before we're out of time? Is there anything that we kind of missed that is an important part of really being able to actively
Yeah.
do this
We didn't
stuff?
talk about mindset. I can talk
Well,
about that.
Go
Like
ahead.
a growth mindset
Okay.
versus a fixed mindset,
Okay. What?
which is what I teach in my therapy.
Got you. Go.
Actually, I've mentioned it today for those of you who saw me today. But so a growth mindset a fixed mindset, I think about being like in concrete, wet concrete. You can't go anywhere. You're fixated where you're at. You're stuck. I suck at math, so I'm always going to suck at math. There's just nothing I can do about it. Okay? Whereas a growth mindset is the mindset that you have that you can move forward, that you can grow, that you can do something. Okay, I suck at math. That means I need to find a tutor and I need to study twice as hard for my upcoming math test so that I can pass it.
Love that.
And like, I think when you have that growth mindset of like, okay, I can actually do this, I might have to put in a little extra work. I might have to
Find a different way.
find a different way, add more support people,
Segment it off a little bit so that you
Right.
do one step at a time.
spread it out, use timers, whatever it is that I need, but I can do it. And so like, I think when you have that mindset, it definitely makes it easier rather than like the fixed where you're just stuck and you're like, I suck at math, so I'm always going to suck at math and there's nothing I can ever do to get better at math.
I want to share something. I was traumatized in the 10th grade because all this stuff happened to me in the 10th grade. I had a math teacher who I got up and I froze up on the board, and I was doing it was geometry
Ooh.
and doing angles
I
and
didn't have
things
to
like
take
that. And
geometry.
she said, "You are stupid," and I carried that with me all the rest of my time.
Right.
Yeah,
It was an indelible moment.
And then when I got into, and I took statistics, I called it sadistics because I'd already had that mindset.
I would agree.
And in undergraduate, and I said, well, I'm just going to pass to get the grade.
Yeah.
When I had to find out that I had to take 5 research courses, and for my doctorate, and guess what I had to take was
Sadistic.
I was convinced I couldn't do it. Then I had this one professor, and he believed in me, and I ended up
Made all the difference in the
Yeah,
world.
and I've taught statistics now.
Yeah. Now
So-
you're a
Look at
professor
you,
of
full
statistics.
circle,
So-
full circle.
Yeah.
Well,
No, I love that.
it's-
Thank you for
Yeah.
sharing that, John.
So,
and
I
I
mean,
know
I
I
that
feel like I've been triggering you tonight. Sushi,
No, no.
math,
No, but you see, you did a good thing. I just put a little
umph to it.
No, I put a real life
Yeah, no,
example.
we appreciate it.
Yeah.
I'm just making fun of you.
May
John.
you live long as I have
And prosper.
and prosper.
And as you're able to live long and prosper, then you have more and more opportunity to continue doing this. Listen, you have beliefs that have been harming you and helping you, but you want to examine and know and connect and actively, purposely discover what it is that you actually believe as it relates to what you've experienced. This is a part of your life, and it's a part of your life that you can do something about, whether it be vis-a-vis through trauma or through typical everyday events. You have an awesome opportunity the longer that you're with us on this earth to really examine and change, actively repair past false beliefs. So stay with us on this journey and experience the pleasure that it is when you really do get those aha moments with your friends or at home or in your own thought
Or in
writing.
therapy.
Or in, of course, therapy. All right, guys. Have a good week. Be well, stay well, and we'll see you soon.
Be positive.
Bye.